Joining us right now at 973 ESPN. You can see the show on YouTube and Twitter and join the conversation there. Dave Weinberg joins us for another edition of Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I think the first question a lot of people have is, did Dave Weinberg watch the game on Sunday?
Dave Weinberg was at the game on Sunday, so yes, I did.
There you go. See, well, that's a definite different conversation then. So let me ask you.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me ask you that. Okay, so watching the game on television as I was, the perception was that was one of the loudest crowds I've heard for a regular season game in a while. And then after they didn't complete that wannabe Philly special, it seemed like the air was let out of the building. Is that how it felt in the building?
Absolutely, yeah. The crowd was very loud, and they were so happy to be back. And yeah, they were very excited. It was really loud. It was rowdy. It was football season again. And after they went for that ridiculous Philly not so special, if you want to call it, it was definitely all the momentum and all the excitement that they had built up. It just seemed to like it deflated the balloon, so to speak, and they never really recovered from it.
Dave, I wrote about this myself over at 97.3 ESPN.com. To me, the offense was Nick Sirianni overthinking the room. I think Sirianni went out of that game with a completely wrong game plan. He tried to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you break down the plays, you break down everything, all the numbers, you rewatch the game, and you realize that wasn't the same offense you saw in week one. It was like he said, I'm going to try to show this team we can go deep, when you don't have to go deep that many times.
No, if you want to take some shots here and there, absolutely. You have, a lot of speed on the outside with Kez Watkins and Jalen Rager, and it showed up on the 91-yard reception that Quez had in the game. But yeah, it's I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to accomplish. You have first and goal on the one. Just sneak it 3 times, will you please, or 4? You don't have to throw the ball. You don't have to try anything fancy. You have a very good running quarterback. You got a tremendous offensive line. Use it. Don't try to be too tricky. Like you say, he did outthink himself on that occasion, I think, and actually throughout the game. I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to accomplish. I guess he just wanted to show everybody that he's a great offensive mind. So he wanted to, show some things that maybe people hadn't seen before, but it really wasn't necessary. If he had just stuck to the basics, I think they possibly would have came out with a win.
Now, Dave, you've covered the Eagles through many different iterations of coaches in this town. Sirianni, after the game, said the game was his fault. He has to do better. And at one point, you're like, hey, great, he admitted to something wrong. But on the other hand, it's like, didn't I hear that from Andy Reid and Doug Peterson?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what's the big surprise here? I heard everybody saying, giving credit to him for his admission, if you will. But yeah, it's what else is a coach supposed to say? They're certainly not going to blame the players. So what are they going to do? They're going to blame themselves. They're always going to put the blame on themselves for whatever goes wrong, whether it was their fault or not. In this case, it was his fault, so, good for him for owning up to it, but that really wasn't that big of a surprise. I mean, that's what a coach is supposed to do, really.
The one play I wanted to see on that goal line, Dave, that we didn't see, but we saw a variation of it later in the game, was when Jalen Hurts ran that option pitch with Miles Sanders. To me, you should have run that on the goal line, but behind Mailata. You should have said, Mailata, go plow, Kelsey, run to the edge, and we'll just run an option and hope for the best. To me, that's the play that should have been run on the goal line.
Yeah, you're possibly right there. I mean, I could see that play having some success. I mean, I personally, if you're down that close, just stick to the inside. Just try to overpower the guys. But and that play certainly would have accomplished that also. But yeah, when you're backed up a little bit, certainly you should be able to try. You should try that kind of a play. And you're right, Mailata's having an outstanding season so far. Big, powerful, rolling over people. And that's definitely a play that I think would have worked. You're right.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out all of his extra points over at 973ESPN.com. Dave, the other side of the game to me on Sunday was the penalties. This team now has 22 penalties in 2 games. And for a coaching staff that preached fundamentals, basics, doing football the right way, I don't know if the players didn't hear them or not, or what's going on, because to me, when you have more penalties than the other team for 2 straight games, that's not fundamentals and basics.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because everybody's been talking all along about how Nick is a player's coach. Well, the danger of that is that they might not respect you or maybe fear you like someone with a little more aggressiveness, a little more authority. I've heard that he does yell at players on occasion, but if you're trying to be their buddy, they're not always going to respect what you have to say. And yeah, that's a glaring example of a lack of discipline on a team, and those things can really kill you over the course of a season if you continue to let it happen. I mean, especially that penalty on Derek Barnett. How many times do we have to see that before he gets benched, or even something more drastic? But he's just that kind of player. It doesn't seem like anybody can get through to him. But most of all, Nick Sirianni, I guess. But yeah, it's if you're going to if you expect to make the playoffs, you expect to have a winning season, you have to be more disciplined than what they've been showing so far.
Yeah, I got to give credit to it was Zach Berman who tweeted out that Barnett has been flagged for 8 personal fouls in his career, including 6 unnecessary roughness penalties and 2 roughing the quarterback. So, this is a trend, a visible trend with him. And by the way, Kayvon Wallace, that helmet hit, he did that in college too. So you have 2 guys who have a history of making those kind of plays, being that irresponsible. And to me, Dave, it's not just the coaches, it's the other players. Fletcher Cox, somebody else on the team's got to grab these guys and be like, dude, like, for example, and I'm not saying, this is 100% what happened, but if someone committed a stupid foul on the Andy Reid Eagles, right, on defense, Trotter or Dawkins are getting in their face, right? At some point in time, who's the guy on the Eagles right now who is getting in Barnett and Wallace's face, especially considering that the heart of this defense, Brandon Graham, is now done for the year?
Yeah, that's a major loss for them. Huge loss, actually, not just on the field, but in the locker room, because he would have been that guy to maybe call Derek to task a little bit for what he did. But now that he can't play, or he doesn't have the same influence. I mean, you can still be in the locker room, but you're just not going to be viewed in the same way if you're not out there on the field with him. And yeah, it's going to be incumbent upon guys like Fletcher Cox, like Darius Slay, I guess, who's an NFL veteran. Only been there a couple of years, but still, he has that cachet that comes with being one of the best players in the league at your position. Trying to think who else might be the guy. Defensively, that might be it. Because the rest of the defense is kind of either guys who are very young or guys who haven't been here that long. So, like you mentioned, I think Fletcher Cox might be the guy that should probably step up and be more assertive. That's really not Fletcher's way. He's more of a he's a funny guy in the locker room, but he's kind of quiet. He's not really one of those rah-rah kind of guys, but he's going to have to be a more of a veteran leader, like you said. And even it's not impossible for an offensive guy to do that too. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, in our conversations that Peterson had that veterans committee that 5-6 guys who would kind of govern things, and hopefully Nick has the same kind of thing with his team. But if he does, then it should be Lane Johnson, or it should be Jason Kelsey, or somebody like that can also kind of get their point across.
So, Dave, the gauntlet of the schedule is coming up here for the Eagles. Monday Night Football in Dallas, then back home against Patrick Mahomes. You might as well talk about that.
Loss.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the Mahomes. To me, the Mahomes game is 100% a loss. It's no offense to the Eagles, but Mahomes and the Chiefs are not losing to the Eagles. Then you travel to Carolina to play a Panthers team with a very good defense and a resurgent Sam Darnold. Then you come home against the defending Super Bowl champs on Thursday Night Football with Brady. Always seems like the guy has a chip on his shoulder for something. And then you got to travel to Vegas to play the Raiders, who are starting the season 2-0, as they won against two teams that were expected to make the postseason. So to me, this stretch of 5 games is going to either be really ugly or at least moderately competitive.
Yeah, based on what I saw the first week, they'd be competitive. Based on what I saw last week, not so much. It's going to be really interesting to see how Nick gets the team to respond to what happened last Sunday. How to deal with adversity, how to bounce back from it. And you're right, the schedule certainly doesn't get any easier from here on out. And if they can, if they somehow wind up losing 3-4 in a row, then the season is in danger of spiraling out of control. So you're really going to have to put your foot down to try and turn things around. If they can somehow come out with a win, maybe 2 in the stretch, then I think they'll be okay the rest of the way. But if not, then they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, to me, the 2 games that I think are the most, for lack of a better term, winnable are the Panthers and the Raiders, just because I don't think either one of those teams are dominant forces of nature. You know what I mean? Whereas, to me, I understand that you get the Bucks and the Chiefs at your house, but they're still the Bucks and the Chiefs. Like I can't get past who those quarterbacks and who those teams are at this point for the Eagles.
Yeah, you're not winning those 2 games. You're just not. Yeah, if they can, those are the 2. I mean, even Dallas too. I mean, Dallas is they look good the other night, beating the Chargers team that I kind of think might be going to open the Super Bowl for the AFC at the end of the year. So to beat that team really says a lot about Dallas, but they do have some weaknesses also. So maybe you can find a way to win that game. But yeah, this is a really daunting stretch of the schedule, like you said, and they're really going to have to scratch and claw to get a win or 2 here.
Yeah, the weird thing with Dallas also is that they score a ton of points against the Tampa in week 1. Then they score barely anything, and their defense helps them win the game in week 2 without Lawrence and without La'el Collins. So it's I don't know what this Cowboys team is at this point. Are they the team that almost beat Tampa week 1? Or are they the team whose defense stepped up huge and beat the Chargers in week 2? I have no idea.
You can say the same thing about the Eagles, I guess, right? I mean, are they the team that embarrassed Atlanta in Atlanta, or are they the team that struggled the way they did on Sunday? So, yeah, I guess maybe that's the way for all those teams that are kind of like mediocre, especially in the NFC East. It doesn't look like there's any clear-cut team that's going to take charge of this. So maybe mediocre is going to be good enough, but I would think if you're Nick Sirianni and the fans, you want something more than that.
Dave Weinberg joining us for another edition of Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Dave, the first list of nominees for the 2022 Pro Football Hall of Fame class came out today. And there were 15 notable former Eagle names on the list. Now, we know not all of them are going to make the Hall of Fame because obviously the first list is just kind of like the pool they're drawing from. But there are some interesting names on it. I want to run some of them by you because I think I think for fans out there, hearing some of these names, knowing that they're at least being considered for the Hall of Fame, some of them may interest them. Some of them may be like, wait, what? So let's go with the quarterbacks first.
Okay.
Two of the bigger names on the pool list, Randall Cunningham and Donovan McNabb. They're 2 of the names on the nominees list.
Boy, these are both tough. I would, Randall probably deserves consideration because he kind of revolutionized the position. He was that so-called ultimate weapon before the current generation of quarterbacks supposedly reinvented it. I mean, he was doing things that they were doing. He was doing things 20 years ago that they're just not doing now. So, but I don't know that he had enough success to merit in a Hall of Fame selection. Donovan's really tough. I'm one of the guys who thinks Donovan is a Hall of Famer. I know there are a lot of people out there that don't think so, but the fact that he got to 4 or 5 NFC championship games, got to a Super Bowl, albeit they didn't win, but and his statistics are off the charts. I personally would think Donovan should be in there. Randall, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Randall, you could argue there is no Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys without him.
Correct.
And then Donovan, you could argue that if the Eagles didn't draft him 2nd overall, there might not have been an Andy Reid era. You know what I mean? Because he was in many ways kind of the staple. Because many of those years that he was injured and didn't play, they had trouble getting up and going. So it's definitely an interesting argument for both of them. Over at the running back position, Brian Westbrook is one of the nominees.
No. Eagles Hall of Fame, absolutely. Maybe even jersey retired. I don't know. Undoubtedly one of the best Eagles in history. But when you think of him, when you think of like Hall of Fame, you think of guys who were probably the best at their position in their era. And I don't know that Brian fits that bill. He did a lot of things well, but I don't think he was great. And I think greatness determines whether you're in Canton or not.
By the way, two other running backs who are on the nominees list who are former Eagles are some famous or infamous names for the 90s, depending on who you ask. Herschel Walker and Ricky Waters.
Ricky Waters deserves serious consideration. A lot of people kind of get on him for his quirky personality. And, his first game as an Eagle wasn't the best with for what. But he did rush for 1,000 yards that season. And he pretty much carried that 95 team on his back by himself. And he had a pretty nice career for himself. He's probably going to fly under the radar a little bit, but I think he might be somebody that deserves consideration. Herschel Walker, I guess you have to consider his USFL stuff, right? Because it's Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Right, Pro Football
not
Hall
just
of Fame.
NFL. So I guess if you take everything into consideration, maybe. Based on his NFL stuff, though, no, definitely not.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, two nominees on the Pro Football Hall of Fame list that came out today who were from the famous Eagles defenses from the late 80s, early 90s. Seth Joyner and Eric Allen are both on the nominees list.
Eric Allen, most definitely. He belongs in Canton. He probably should have been there already. He was an elite corner, the best in franchise history, really, I think. And he was one of the best in the league at his position when he played. Seth, that's a little bit of a tougher call, but if you look at his statistics, he probably is a Hall of Famer. I mean, I don't know if any other linebackers who had like more interceptions and more sacks than him. And he was unquestioned a leader on that defense. The problem was that we had to share the spotlight with Reggie White and those kind of guys, and Jerome Brown, Wes Hopkins, Andre Waters. So maybe he didn't get all the attention he deserved. Eric Allen, most definitely. Seth Joyner, possibly.
By the way, Seth Joyner is second all-time in Eagles franchise history in solo tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little side note. So he was a tackling machine for all intents and purposes. Couple corners on the list. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
He's a pretty good analyst now, too, I think. I mean, I hear him on the Eagles post-game show. He doesn't pull any punches, that's for sure.
No, he definitely doesn't. That is 100% true. Couple corners that you covered, Dave, made the list. Troy Vincent and Asante Samuel.
Yes and yes. Troy, he was unbelievable for the Eagles, I think, and for the Dolphins as well before that. He was the leader of that defense, and unbelievably productive, plus an unquestioned leader. I definitely think he belongs in there. Asante, just based on his interceptions, you think he has to be under consideration. I mean, he wasn't the best tackler, and he definitely an odd person, but just for he was a ball hawk. He took the ball away from you, and when you needed it. So yeah, he definitely has to earn some consideration there, I think.
And then a couple of special teamers on the nominees list. We know the Hall of Fame doesn't have a lot of special teams guys, but among the former Eagles, we'll just get you a quick hit on each one of these guys. The kicker, Gary Anderson.
No, go ahead.
Punter Sean, the punter Sean Landetta.
Wow. He played forever. I mean, and USFL, NFL. He probably played for every team there was, but I would probably say no.
Kick returner, punt returner, Brian Mitchell.
That's another tough one because he had some pretty good years with Washington as well before he came over to the Eagles. But I would probably say no.
And then the one that made me chuckle. So I'm glad you're sitting down, Dave.
T.O. Oh,
no,
go ahead.
but T.O.'s already
in. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, go ahead.
Kick return, punt returner, Allen Rossum.
What? Well, the fact he went to Notre Dame maybe deserves some recognition, but no, I don't even know why he's on that list.
I have no idea either, but I had to write it down because I'm like, I can't believe he's on the list of nominees.
Wow. I guess if you play a certain amount of years, I guess you automatically have to be on it. I don't know.
Well, he had a certain number of kick and punt return touchdowns, but most of those were with other teams. They weren't with the Eagles.
Yeah, Falcons probably, right?
Yeah, so, but those are the main names that made the list. The full list we have over at 97.3
Oh, okay. I'll check it out.
.com. And people can also remember that we already have one Eagle guaranteed for next year's Pro Football Hall of Fame because Dick Vermeil did make the senior finalist, so at least he will be in the
awesome.
2022 class. The full list, like I said, Allen Rossum is not the only funny name on the list. So folks can check out the other funny name over at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's Dave Weinberg. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Check out all of his work for us. Extra point columns at 97.3 ESPN.com. He joins us each and every Wednesday for Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, always appreciate the time and the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Josh. And I promise I'll have a podcast coming up on Friday.
Oh, well, there you go. Tequila and touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. There you go. Dave, talk to you soon.
Thanks, Josh. All righty. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.